today. For me, it's really great honor to open this bootcamp. I think it's the second year in a row that I have. I think the first session on the bootcamp, and it's really great to be here. This type of event that Ras and the team organize every day, and every month, every year are amazing, and I always try to help in any way I can. So today's session is going to be about, what everybody hates, the licensing, right? We all hate licensing. We all hate talking about licensing with customer. Microsoft hate talking about licensing with Microsoft. Why shouldn't we love it? We should love it. So this session will try to help everybody to understand where we need to focus on the Microsoft Dynamics 365 customer engagement licensing. First, I'm not going to talk about finance and supply chain management. I'm not going to talk about Power Platform, or at least I'm not going to deep dive on Power Platform, because probably we all know that there is no Dynamics 365 project without a Power Platform license around. So we're going to focus on Dynamics 365 customer engagement. And the idea again is to understand from the basis and then to go through a few resources you can use to be on top of the licenses changes that, again, we all know that Microsoft love two things mostly: change the name of the applications and the icons, and change the licensing. Yeah, I know it's not the best time to say these type of things, with the MVP uh, award, right, on the corner of, but you know, we all know this, and there's no shame to say. But hey, we need to live with the licensing. So, for who doesn't know me, and you're lucky until now, my name is Nicolas Fernandez. Nico Fernandez is most Maurici way to say it. So, Nico, I'm an MVP and MCT. I've been on this road for about 13 years, working with different CRMs or no-code solutions. Specifically with Dynamics, I started in 2014 in Argentina, and then I really quickly start working on pre-sales. I say 6 years, but actually I started working on pre-sales right 3 months after I joined the Dynamics partner, but it was more sporadically, so it was really low touch engagement. But 6 years ago, it became the majority of my time, and actually 5 years ago, it started being my full time job, being on pre-sales. Right now, I'm leading the EMEA pre-sales team at HCL for Dynamics 365 customer engagement and Power Platform. And I have a community initiative, this Power 365 initiative, with a few colleagues that we have a few activities there that we want always share things. And well, it's not always possible to do with the frequency that we like. So you can find me everywhere. I'm like the courageous, you turn up the light. I'll be around Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. There you have my personal and my professional email as well. So if you need anything, you want to contact me, please do it. I'm going to upload this deck to SlideShare. I'm going to share it on LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'll be sharing that later today. So again, to understand that what we're going to see today, we're going to talk about the licensing on the MX365. We're going to understand the type of licenses we're going to start with a high level understanding of that. We're going to deep dive on different areas, the most important ones, because you may know that the licensing, it's complex and it has some dirty, ugly places and things that we never want to discuss because, yeah, they change a lot, as I say, and actually it's not the most clear part of the licensing model. We're going to talk about that. We're going to identify that so you can be aware of that. And if you face any issue, you will know where to find the right information. The second part of the session is going to be there. If you have any doubt, any insight, please open. I think the comments are open, the chat is open, and add your comments there. Is how we can identify the right licensing model. And this, I think, actually, we are going to start working this topic during the first part of the session, but we're going to focus specifically on the session. And the last part is more about where we can find the right learning resources. It's not only about the licensing guide. I'm not going to sneak peek anything, but we'll see there's a few more things we need to consider, places where we can find more information. So, first of all, we need to understand that on the MX365 customer engagement, we have three big types of licenses. So we can license, we have products, or we have SKUs for the tenant, and that we're going to talk about some examples. So at tenant level, so it's not user license. So you buy a license for the entire tenant, and then every user could access to it, to the service. We have the user licenses, so that's the more common type of license, and then we have the device licenses. On each one of these, we have different things to consider, but these are the big three big areas to understand, right? So when we talk about tenant licenses, we're talking about customer insights, customer voice, marketing. So you don't need to license each user that is going to use the application. You will need to license the tenant. And in these cases, they have some capacity, some quota to consider. And that's something as well that you need to take in consideration, because uh, some of the products, again, these free products, for example, you need to license the product itself. That will include a base capacity. And then if you need more capacity, for example, in customer insights, the capacity is on the profiles that you can have on customer insight. And it will be different if it's a B2B or a B2C profile. Then, if you need more profiles, you will have to buy an add-on, and that is an increase on that capacity. So, even if we have the license, you will see that you have multiple add-ons. Like when you go to Burger King, and they say you can order the Whopper however you want. Well, it's quite similar. So yeah, you will have your base license, and on top of that, you can add as many add-ons as you want. But we need to understand, and I have to say, CE is much simpler than F and SCM. So finance and supply chain management has a really complex part. On commerce application is whoa, really complex. Everything that you can add, the tiers, the bands, everything. So I'm lucky to be on the CE side of life. The second type of user license, sorry, the license type, it's a user license. And this is quite simple, right? It's a sales enterprise, field service enterprise, field service, so customer service enterprise, sales premium, Microsoft relationships, sales solution plus. So all these things are nominal. So you buy the license and you assign to a user. It's not something you can share among different users. It's for you. You are the user assigned with this, and you will have all the rights the license will provide you. And again, this is important to understand how the different user license work together, because there are some incompatibilities that we are going to discuss. And then if you need more than one license, you need to understand how you should plan it, how you should define the licensing model. That's something we're going to talk in a few slides. And the third is the device license. And there's not many licenses that you will find as a device license. And these four use cases where you have many users working with the same devices. For example, a contact center, or maybe a field service implementation where you have field technicians with different shifts, and they will use the same tablet, for example, right? So maybe the best approach will be to license the device instead of the user, because they don't have to use different devices, and the device will be used every day by three different users. So in that case, in those cases, it's more cost efficient to think about on a per device license model instead of a per user license model. Okay, so when we talk about the license, the user license, I say what happens when we need more than one application. And this is cross CE. So it's not only for CE, it will include everything on the Dynamics 365. When we talk about the license, the user license, you're going to license an application. And that will give you a lot of rights. And there are some rights are high touch rights on other applications. So for example, a sales sales enterprise user will have rights to access some capabilities, some to do some actions on a customer service application, right, or customer service processes. And that's fine. That's great, because maybe I'm a salesperson. I need to create a case, or I need to work see the cases first. Every enterprise license, every license will allow you to see everything on Dataverse. That I'm talking about Dataverse, and I'm assuming if you're in a licensing session, I'm assuming that everybody knows here that Dynamics 365 customer engagement is built on top of Dataverse. So all data is in Dataverse. So the main license is called the base license, right? So if you need more than one application, you will have a main license, and then any additional application that you need to access will be the attach, and you can have multiple attaches. But there are some rules on which application could be a base application, considering the attach, or which one should be the main and which one should be an attach, and that will be different on different organizations because of the applications they need to use. So actually on the same organization could be different among different users. And there's a really simple, rule: the more expensive license is the base license, and then the other licenses are the attached licenses. When we talk about the base licenses, we're talking about sales enterprise, customer service enterprise, field service, project operations, sales professional, customer service professional, Microsoft Relationship Sales Solution Plus. That, yeah, I put the letters because hey, it should be a big box if not. And the sales premium. See, these are the big, big guns, full applications with a lot of, functionality that we're going to use. And again, we're talking about the user license. I'm not talking about, for example, you won't see here marketing, even if it's one of the core applications in Dynamics 365 customer engagement, because that is a tenant license. You don't need, to assign a license or to buy a license per user. On top, on top of all these licenses, you can have an attached license. And this could be, it's quite similar. You could have the sales enterprise as an attached license, customer service enterprise, field service, project operations, sales professional, customer service professional, guides, remote assist. You could have guides as a base license. Well, yes, without any attach. I'm talking here on how they can be based and attached, right? So you can have remote assist standalone implementation. A user that only has remote assist, only has guides, and actually guides can also be. I just realized that inputting on the per device guides can also be licensed by device. It makes sense, right? So even the remote assist guides can be a base because they could be a standalone implementation. Here I only include them as an attach because they cannot be a base for another attach, right? And sorry. And when we talk about the licenses, we need to consider, okay, which are the rights, I mentioned that before, that each one of the licenses provide us. This is a screenshot that you will see a few screenshots from the licensing guide. The licensing height is a 64, 65, give or take, pages document that will include everything on customer engagement and everything on field on finance and operation, finance and supply chain management. I will say it's everything, but of course it will have a lot of links to external content, external documentation, external resources to deep dive on some of the topics. When you think about which one should be my attach or base license, that's part of the cost. As I say, the more expensive license will be the base license, and then the other licenses will be attached. The price, I'm not going to talk about prices today because that's crazy. That change, different countries has different prices, and on the same country, if depending on how you buy the licenses, if you buy directly on the web, if you buy on a CSP contract or an enterprise agreement contract, uh, you will have different prices. So you could have different prices. So I'm not going to talk about prices. Yes, it's important for you to know. For example, and let me come back to the slide. There's important to know that some of the licenses are only available on a specific uh, channel, or way to buy it. For example, the Microsoft Relationship Sales Solution Plus, that is basically Dynamics Sales Enterprise plus LinkedIn Sales Navigator. That license can only be acquired through an enterprise agreement. So you cannot buy it online. You can go to the Dynamics web and buy some sales enterprise licenses. That's fine. You can go to a partner, to a CSP contract, and buy some customer service licenses. That's fine. But you cannot do that for Microsoft's relationship solution, sales solution plus. Wow. Yeah, it's too complex. Too many words. So that's something also to keep in consideration, that sometimes some licenses are restricted for some type of contracts. It doesn't mean that if you don't have an enterprise agreement uh, you cannot have that functionality. You can, but you will have to buy the sales enterprise license, and then you need to acquire the sales navigation license separately, and then you can implement everything together. That's fine, but the licenses are going to be two different licenses. So that complexity is also for you to consider when you go through your licensing model. So going back to this slide, it's important for you to understand not only that the application will be a base application or a touch application based on the price, but also which is the application that you should acquire. And for that, the user license has different rights. This, as I say, this is an example of a customer service license. It compares the enterprise license, the professional license, and the team member licenses. Because the team member license, I'm going to talk about the team member license in a few slides, but basically the team member license will give you some high touch rights, I would say, for specific business processes when a user needs to support customer service, project operations, self-service HR scenarios, or sales uh, operations. So when you need to support any of those processes, you could acquire a team member license, and that is going to be a low cost license. It is highly restricted. So you need to be really clear if the team member license is the right approach for you, or if you need maybe a power up license, or maybe you need a professional or enterprise license. And the cost will be crazy different from a team member and an enterprise license. But hey, we need to be sure that the limitations or the limits that the team member license, it's something that will support our design. And that will take us to sorry, I'm jumping from one thing to another, and that I know that's crazy, and I hopefully you can follow me. But basically, when we think about the licenses, it's not only when we do pre-sales. That's right, I'm doing pre-sales, I'm talking with the customer, I need to present an offer, a solution blueprint, if you like, or a draft of the solution blueprint. And that should include the licensing model that the customer will need, because the customer needs to know his business case, right? He needs to build the business case. He needs to understand the cost of the, not only of the implementation, but also of the recurrent cost the license will mean. Of course, during the project that could change, because yeah, we don't have all the information during pre-sales, and that's why a consultant and mostly a solution architect should be aware of the licensing limitations, because any design decision they take could affect the required licensing. And again, it's important because it's cost related, and we as consultants, as an architects, we need to ensure that we're providing not only the best solution, as a design solution, but also we need to ensure that it's a more cost effective solution from the licensing perspective. So this is a nice matrix that we have on the licensing guide as well. So it shows you the which base license could have each attached license. And if you have multiple scenarios, you can come here and play like Battlefield and say, okay, if I have a commerce based license, I could have any of these, you know, um, attached licenses. It is not that common that you will have more than one attached. So Microsoft did a huge change a few years ago already, because before you have the Dynamics engagement plan, and that will include all applications, and then you have different levels of licenses. Then they say, okay, no, you won't have it anymore. Now you have the per app license, right? And the price, again, I'm not going to talk about the price, but the logic behind the change was, okay, the cost of the base license plus one attached license is going to be the same cost of the customer engagement plan that include all of the licenses. So yeah, it affected the organizations that use each user use one more than two applications, but Microsoft say they do a huge presentation on this, that it was the minimum of the customers that have a user have more than two applications. Kind of makes sense in the majority of scenarios, because if you think on customer engagement, of course you have also the unified operations, on the customer engagement plus F&O scenarios. But if you think on customer engagement, It makes sense. So it's not that common that you'll be, using Sales Hub, Customer Service Hub, and Field Service applications all free, you know, and project operations. Probably you will need a high touch, right? If you're a salesperson, you will need a high touch right on the other applications, and that's something that the enterprise license already support. So even that this change generated a lot of discussion back then. um, Cost discussion, cost aside, I think it makes sense the way that right now we are licensing the customers, because it's role defined. So this is your role, this is the application that you need, and then on top of that you can include other licenses. So before we talk about base licenses, then we have the attached licenses, but on top of that we can also have add-ons, and those add-ons could be user licenses as well. When we talk about, for example, customer service, we have the digital messages, we have the chat, the voice, and each one of these has some capacity associated. So on top of the add-ons per user, then you have the capacity per tenant. So yeah, that is complex. Then we have RSO, that is for field service, that's resource skill optimization optimizer. I never remember the O if it's optimization optimizer, but basically RSO, it allows you to optimize your resources when you're trying to schedule them, when you're trying to plan next day, or with an ASAP criteria. That's really nice. It's a black box. You cannot modify much things. You need to configure it only, and you can play it. But again, it's a license on top of the field service license that is already, sometimes it's kind of high. And then on top of that, you need to include the RSO. So yeah, I didn't implement RSO many, many times, I would say. And then we have the sales insights. And yes, with sales, we have a lot of licenses. We have the professional, the enterprise, and the premium that I showed on the slide before. So basically, the professional has a limited amount of rights and functionality. There's some few things that you won't have on a professional. If I recall correctly, goals is one of things, major things that you won't have. Then you have the enterprise. That is the most common scenario. uh, and it's again, I didn't implement too many professional. It's more thoughtful. It's designed more for SMBs. uh, and something important that I will talk about in a few slides as well is it's how you can mix enterprise and professional licenses. You cannot. So it's important that as well to know when you define the licensing model. But basically, you have the professional, then you have the enterprise, and on top of that, you have the premium. And the premium, sales premium, is basically sales enterprise plus sales insights. So it's a combo that I think you have a preferred price if you buy the premium, but sometimes you will need sales insight for one to users, and you don't want to buy the premium for any reason, because maybe you want to upgrade, downgrade uh, month by month. I don't know. People has their own reasons. I think the sales insight in the time will disappear, and we're going to keep probably professional, enterprise, and premium. So basically, when you decide, when we're talking about with the customer, and which are the personas, the user types that you will have on the implementation, you have to define which base license you will have. For example, customer service, and on top of that, you need to define if you need any attached license, for example, sales enterprise or field service. And on top of that, you need to identify if you need any type of add-on. Yeah, it is complex. It's more complex when you start digging into this, and you see that I won't say every month, but every few months you have a new add-on or a new change on the capacity on the add-on. So we need to be really on top of these small changes. I know the licensing guide scares a lot, but I would strongly recommend for you to download it every time. So if you work on pre-sales, you need to download it every time you do an offer, because licenses change. I say a lot, and we'll see that in a few moments on the licensing guide. At the bottom of it, you have the change log, and you can see how it changed every month. Maybe change a small thing, maybe change a big thing, big things, but we need to be on top of that. We need to be on with the last updated version. Um, so yeah, we have this complexity when we talk about licenses per user, but it's not that we're going to have more simple scenario for the tenant licenses. So the last user type is a team member license, and for the team member license, as I say, we have to define if that is the right approach because it is quite limited. And the other approach we could have is in the same environment, in the same implementation, to have some dynamics licensed user, some power ups licensed user, because the power ups keeps you right to access all the data in the database. And yeah, it will have some limitations, some create, update, and delete limitations on restricted tables. The restricted tables are basically some field service, customer service, and project operations tables that you cannot create, update, or delete records if you have a Power Apps license, but you can read. So, for example, you could have a field service implementation, and you could have your field technicians licensed with Power Apps if they don't have to work with the work order, or if they have to open the work order only, not to engage, update, delete directly or indirectly, of course, the work order or the booking. Does it make sense? Okay, maybe not for a work order, but if you need to do some sort of shift management where you don't execute the task, you just need to see when you need to be, where do you need to be. So which is the task that it was assigned for you, the shift that it was assigned to you. If that's the scenario, of course, yeah, you don't need a field service license for that. You could have a Power Apps license, and you could say, yeah, but you could have also a team member license. Yes, but there's where the limitations on the team member license start to bother, because team member license are really limited. So you only have access to three predefined applications that you could modify, including up to 15 tables. And those 15 tables could be native or custom tables. And here's where, the team member license for me presents a few problems, because supposedly it allows you to access all the data, you know, uh, in Dataverse, and that's right. Yeah, that's what the theory tells you. But then you can access the data through the applications, the native applications, and you can modify the applications only by including up to 15 tables, native or custom. So there is some conflict there on the design of the applications and the actual data that you will be able to access. So honestly, team member license is not one of my favorites. Uh, if I can avoid them, I will try to go to Power Apps license. But of course, if you need to modify, create case, for example, if you need to self-service on cases, wherever you need to create case, you cannot do it with Power Apps, right? So those limitations on Power Apps are important as well. And on some scenarios, you will need a team member license. But again, they they are meant more for when a user supports a full Dynamics user, right? So it's for those type of processes. So we need to identify that correctly, because sometimes we're going to license team member when we actually need a full enterprise license. I talk about the custom tables, and depending on the license that you have we already talked about the full users, the enterprise applications. We talk about the professional, users, and we talk about the team members. And each one of these will have different rights on custom tables. As I say, we have full access to all data tables, on the enterprise. There's no limitations on any type, any privileges for the full license, right? The enterprise license, and that includes field service, customer service, project operations, customer service. Then on the professional level, you start having these limitations where you can only modify, so you can only have extra privileges on up to 15 custom tables per application. In this case, again, it is based because it's like they mentioned like this because you have specific applications for the professional licenses like you have on team member. And the same happened with the the team member licenses. Okay, so it's important to understand how much are you going to extend a data model, how much you are going to extend the process to define if you can use a team member license, or if a professional license is good enough, or if you need an enterprise license. And again, if you need to extend a lot of the the native processes, and you don't need, some users don't need to actually execute a native logic, or maybe to access to do some actions, create, update, or delete actions on these restricted tables I mentioned, then uh, maybe you need a power ups license. So we need to define that in an early stage. Then we have the device licenses, as I mentioned. We have the sales enterprise, customer service enterprise, field service. These are the main, or the most important. As I mentioned before, I forgot to put here the guides license, and I think those are the four on the CE ecosystem that are device um, licenses. Another thing to consider, and this is one of the ugliest parts on on the licensing guide, on the license model actually, is the multiplexing. So multiplexing is basically, so here is the definition from the Microsoft documentation. But basically, multiplexing is when you are using one license for multiple users, right? And you can do that in different ways. You can do it, by taking data outside Dynamics, having people working on the data, and importing the results. You can have it through another interface with other type of ID provider. So the problem here is, if a person is going to act on behalf, so if the person is part of the organization, or if the person needs to act on behalf of the organization, then it has to be licensed. So you cannot keep that device or user license. And that is important because Microsoft audits this, and you could have a big problem with Microsoft. Uh, so be aware of that, and the risk of not being compliant with the multiplexing policy. As I said before, another thing to consider is if we are going to mix the sales professional and say sales enterprise, or the customer service professional, customer service enterprise, we need to understand if we can have them on the same environment or not. So when you have the sales professional, you cannot have that application on the sales enterprise. So you will only be able to access that application, while the sales enterprise, of course, they can access any application. They have full rights, so they can access whatever they want, and whatever Dynamics environment you may have. The last type of license that we have are the tenant licenses, and here the main three products, and I think they are the only three. I reviewed last night the licensing guide. I think that from the CE perspective, these are three that we can find. So we have marketing, customer insight, and customer voice. And as I say, you will license the channel, the product. So marketing, for example, and you can have with your marketing license, it will allow you the production license. It will allow you to have another license with solution only. But yeah, then you can license another non-production environment, and that is recommended for ALM. So when you do that, you are going to have also an associated capacity. In Dynamics marketing, the capacity is about the contacts, the marketing contacts that you have, and the marketing interactions that you are allowed to have. And it's 10,000 and 100,000 each. So contacts and interactions. Then on top of that, you can add some contact capacity, or some interaction capacity. Each one have different tiers. So you could have, tier one. I honestly don't remember the specific numbers. I think it's 2,000 contacts tier one, or 5,000. That's something I always check again. Those details could change, and I don't think makes any value for us to remember those details. we have the licensing guide to check. But basically, you have these two type of capacities add-ons. Then customer insight, I mentioned you have the profiles and customer voice. It's I would say it's weird to explain because it's based on the server responses. So you can send 1,000 surveys, but if only 10% of those actually respond, you need, like 100 responses. That is how you need to calculate the quota that you need for a customer voice. Customer voice is a solution that is going to include in the enterprise licenses, and then you don't have to license it separately. But if you don't have the enterprise licenses, then you need to acquire that from a tenant license. Both marketing and customer insight can also be uh, a standalone application. So if you don't have any other license, or if you have a low amount of license, for example, 5 sales enterprise, and you want customer insight or you want marketing, you do not qualify for the attached price. So you will have to buy it as a standalone license at a different price, of course. But there are some qualifications. If I remember correctly, there are 10 licenses, different professional or enterprise licenses on marketing, and 20 applications, enterprise applications license, sorry, for customer insight. I think those are the minimum values amount of licenses. If you have that, then you qualify for touch price. So it's going to be, I think it's, well, I don't want to go prices again. Prices change and they can vary country by country, but it's significant the discount that you have if it's an attached license instead of a standalone license. And on top of that, yeah, we have all the Power Platform licenses and add-ons. Yeah, I put Power Pages. I think that we don't still have anything there because it's on preview. But yeah, we will have something, and it will be similar, hopefully, for what is on Power Apps portals. Uh, so what we have right now, it's, as I mentioned, you can have Dynamics users and Power Apps users on the same environment. Maybe you need some Power Automate per flow automation, to be trigger and as part of the solution. Maybe, and if it's a customer service and implementation, omni-channel is on every customer service implementation nowadays. And we need to understand the Power Virtualization licensing as well, because you have the tenant level license, and then you need to license each user that needs to build up bots, and then you need to license the capacity, the bot sessions. So again, I think, well, Power BI, it's another topic that is more complex. Well, it's simple if in majority of scenarios, but if you go to really enterprise scenarios, it can be dirty as well. So I'm not Power BI expert, but I did some research on that. So I think from the Dynamics perspective, there are two major or three possible licenses that you probably are going to use. Those are, yeah, free plus two, I'm going to say. So Power Apps license, something you probably are going to use for some of the users. Could be the per app or per user plan. The Power Apps portal capacity add-on is something that you will need to use if you need a self-service portal. So if you need to provide access to external users, if they are actually external users, so if they are person working on behalf of you, they need to be licensed as an internal user. Again, that's something important. But if they are actually external users, you will have to go through a portal. And the portal itself, it doesn't require a license. In the past, it did. So you have to license each portal. But right now, a portal doesn't have any cost. What you will have is license the capacity, and it will change if it's an authenticated user, external user, or an unauthenticated. So if it's an anonymous user, because you have the capacity per view page view, sorry, or per login. So those are the two add-ons. And then we have Power BI, that most users that need strong, big reports, they will need it. And Power Virtualization, as I say, if you have an omni-channel, you need to consider that. Then AI Builder, yeah, that's something that we're seeing more and more in the projects. That's something to consider as well. There's a really nice calculator online to calculate how many credits you will need. And of course, Dataverse capacity. It's something that, yeah, it's Power Platform, but it's Dynamics at the same time. If you need to consider that, yeah. the volumetry on the data will affect the cost of the licenses because maybe you need to acquire more storage capacity. Okay, wow, there was a 40 minutes review on what's the licensing model, and it was just the tip of the iceberg. I know that, but yeah, I only have 55 minutes to talk about this, so I need to compress things. So, how can we ensure that we're going to build the right licensing model? And yeah, there's no golden rule here. This is just some advice on what I try to do, right? So the first thing is to understand, as I say, if it's going to be an internal user or an external user, because that is a huge change, and you need really to understand from Microsoft perspective if that is an internal or external user. Because maybe from your perspective or the customer perspective, that is an external user, but Microsoft will come and say, nah, 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 that's internal. Yeah. And that's going to be a huge change on the licensing model. And it could be a problem because if you have an organization working on your behalf, they will have to be internal users, but if they have some rotation, they will add some complexity in how you assign the licenses. So maybe you can think on device instead of user licenses. Well, there is where the nightmare of the licensing starts. Then you need to understand different functional areas to focus, on the base license, the attached license, which one is the one that each user needs. If I need, some tenant license like marketing, if you know, um, I can have the attached price or I need a standalone price if I qualify to the offer. Then, which other Power Platform capabilities do I need? So, it is a customer service omni-channel solution where I need voice channel with bot, and I also need a chatbot, and I also need a portal. Okay, that means I need to start reviewing the Power Apps license, the Power Platform license as well, because I need to ensure that I'm offering, and I'm not need to offer, because if the customer has an enterprise agreement, that's Microsoft discussion, but we need to advise the customer correctly, and Microsoft will look to us to propose the right licensing model. So it's important to understand when we need some Power Platform capabilities that are not included in Dynamics rights. Fourth point is the quotas. As I mentioned before, some of the licenses have some capacity, and we need to understand that we need to qualify that, to do the calculations, and to propose the right uh, tier, sorry, tier, tier um, for the different capacity add-ons. So it could be marketing contacts, customer insight profiles, customer voice responses. And we have additional capabilities. Do we need mixed reality? Do we need AI capabilities? And those AI capabilities are included in Sales Enterprise? Or do I need to think on Sales Premium? Or maybe I need to think on Sales Enterprise, but with an add-on of AI Builder because I need more, I don't know, business cards reader quota. So these type of things are things we need to start thinking about. Do I need some custom applications? Okay, then the team member license won't apply. I cannot use it. Do I need social selling capabilities? Okay, then I need to think on the Microsoft Relationship Sales Solution Plus, or the Sales Enterprise or Sales Premium Plus, the LinkedIn Sales Navigator. After we know all of that, hey, the licensing guide, that is our best friend. And yeah, maybe it's not like our friends, because our friends doesn't change every month, but this friend will change every month. So be aware of that. Download the licensing guide, sorry, and try to be on top of the changes. Again, many times are small changes, and once you know the core part of the modeling, you know they already change big time the model, right? From the customer engagement plan to the per app plan, right? I'm really confident that we have 1 year to 3 years before they change the model so drastically again. So I wouldn't worry about that part. Hey, I hope that's right, but it can change tomorrow. We never know. But if you already understand the core part, the base, attach, the add-ons, how this model works, then the monthly changes won't affect you that much, and you can track that more easily. Another thing to mention, and it's quite important, there is a portal. There's the Get a Licensing Ready portal. Some of you probably already know about it. Many of you, I can think that you don't know about it. It's a portal with a lot of training. Well, it's not a lot of training. It has a lot of resources and exams. So you can take exams on different areas. So you have the getting started. That's to understand the licensing model, uh, Microsoft products specific programs, and some old tracks. For the programs, it's more focused on to understand how enterprise agreement works, CSP works. So it's important, kind of. I think if you want to understand everything like that with the getting started exams and material, you will be fine. But if you want to say, hey, I really know my licensing, uh, I was preparing the last slides on the deck last night, and I said, hey, I didn't took the exams, and I took the exams. They're not that crazy, complex. Uh, Once you do the exam, if you need an 80% score to pass the exam, and after you pass all the exams on each one of the area product area, sorry, you will get the certification. Dynamics 365 includes both ERP and so yeah, ERP and CRM, and also on premise. So it has some tricky things there. And Power Platform includes all four major applications. It doesn't include a builder, for example, but Power BI was for me the hardest one. Power Visualization, Power Apps, and Power Automate. So I encourage you to go there and to try the exam and also test yourself. There are real practical questions, and I think they're really good. Some of them they're not common if you work on really enterprise engagement, but it's always to challenge yourself. Trying to move fast. I only have 5 more minutes. So the other thing I mentioned is to understand where you can buy the licenses. So this is an example of the team member licenses and the enterprise licenses. And for example, you can buy them on enterprise agreement, CSP, web direct. But then again, this is limited. So not all the SKUs can be acquired on the same channels. As I mentioned, Microsoft relationships, sales, Solution Plus, it's only available enterprise agreement. There was a few years ago, 2 years ago, I think, field service external vendor preview license that was only available on enterprise agreement as well. So there's a few licenses that if you don't have an enterprise agreement, you cannot acquire. And that's something as well to understand. And that's all. So again, my contact information, if you want to reach me, again, I'll more than happy to help you wherever I can. As I say, I will upload this presentation later today. Now I have to start jumping from one meeting to another. It's a problem, this morning I was talking with Priyesh that I recommend you to stay online for his session. And I had to admit to him, I have a confusion on the time zones, and I thought it was at 8 a.m. My time zone, and it was actually at 10 a.m. my time zone. Luckily for me, I didn't schedule any customer meeting at this time. But yeah, you need to be more. I need to be more conscious on the time zones. So I don't know if there's any question. I didn't saw any comment on the chat. But if you have any question, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. Yes, so we'll keep 5 minutes for any questions. Very interesting. I can't see anything in the chat today. I'm not sure if there's a problem with the Teams chat. Yes, we finally got someone mentioning something in the chat today. That's great. So Francisco, great feedback from Francisco there. Thank you, Nico. Awesome. So it's great. Thank you, Francisco, for confirming the chat is working today. And thank you, Nicholas, because for covering licensing within an hour. I completely agree with you, Nicholas, that licensing is probably the most complex thing when it comes to Dynamics 365, right?
Yeah,
I
and
think we all agree. Yeah.
there are three discussions I always try to avoid: marketing capacity, portals capacity, chatbot capacity. Wow, these three discussions are the worst.
That's right, Nicholas, because they're licensed very differently to the rest of the products.
Yeah,
And I think you highlighted that in your session today. You highlighted the various models for licensing for the different products. So you showed, first of all, you addressed the different user types, but then you also addressed the tenancy licensing and how different products are licensed based on users, whereas some of the products, such as marketing and customer insights and portals, is based on tenancy and instances. So there's, and then again, there's capacity model as well, right? So you covered all of that in your presentation today. And what you also covered was the actual variations across user licenses from professional
yeah.
to enterprise, as well as
Team
the team
member.
member license. And then you also covered Power Apps license as well. And then the variations in terms of capabilities. So, and what you did, you wrapped off with some advice and guidelines to help users to identify when to use. So I think that was very, very important, and you provided some good matrices there, Nicholas. So
I have this
yes.
prepared. Yeah, we have 2 more minutes, and if it's okay, basically this, you have more than one licensing guide. This one is the old online that is available yet. I assume because there are some ASCIIs, still available for old customers. But this the licensing guide, the most important one, 62 pages, and as I mentioned before, you have some appendixes, and the last one tells you the changes, the change log. So as you can see on Shun, there was 4 small changes, though it's not that complex to keep track on that. I just want to, to show that it's really complete, licensing guide. I really like it. In the past was more complex, I think. And on each one of the applications, you will have, if I go top quickly, on each one of the applications, you will have a quick diagram on the licenses, the additional licenses, and the capacity add-ons as well. So if you need to focus on one application, you have here all the information that you need. And this is the portal, the ready, get licensing ready. And again, the Dynamics 365 has 6 models. Oh, sorry, I was left out.
Fantastic, Nicholas. That's excellent. So there is one question from Hector. It's in relation to your final slide in your presentation where you gave guidelines. It was a stair diagram. So Hector has a question asking, I would like to know more about what we have to analyze in each step. So that's something that you already covered in your presentation, but it may be worth showing it once again for Hector's benefit.
Yeah, so this slide, I assume, is this one.
Yes, that looks like the correct one. Correct. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so it's, for me, it's to understand, as I say, the type of user, internal, external. It will change a lot. Then try to focus on understanding the user type license that you need. That's where I say, if you need to manage the opportunity, case management, work order, wherever, extra additional capacity that you might need from add-ons or Power Platform, quotas, and as I say, additional capacity as AI mixed reality. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question.
Thank you, Nicholas. Yes, so this is exactly what
Yeah.
Hector wanted to see, and I know you've already covered this in your presentation.
Yeah.
Some of the questions people are asking, Nicholas, before you finish off today, is could you share your blog and your contact details in the chat, because people would like
Yeah,
a
I,
copy of your
I
slides.
I will do that, and yeah, I will upload today, and I will share on LinkedIn today my this
Fantastic,
presentation
excellent.
on SlideShare.
Excellent, Nicholas. So, Nicholas, we really, really appreciate you were able to kick off the event today on such an important topic to help people start to understand how to build out Dynamics 365 solutions. And that always begins with licensing fundamentally, which you addressed today. So thank you so much for that.
Thank
And also
you.
thank you for all your other previous sessions. So everyone, please keep in touch with Nicholas. He's always busy in the community doing lots of great stuff. So please follow him on LinkedIn, Twitter, follow him on his blog. Keep up the great work, Nicholas.
Thank you, Raz. You too. And for me, as I say, it was an honor to open this bootcamp.
Thank you so much. Excellent. So there you go, guys. That was Nicholas joining